CEE,
Central Europe Explained,
an IDM podcast series
powered by Erste Group.
Episode 1, Central Europe. What does it mean today? With Dr. Erhard Busek. A warm welcome to the first episode of the IDM podcast show CEE, Central Europe Explained. I'm Sebastian Schäffer, Managing Director at the Institute for the Danube Region in Central Europe. I'm here today with Dr. Erhard Busek, former Austrian Vice-Chancellor, Chairman of IDM, and, amongst others, author of the book Mitteleuropa Revisited. Together, we will be discussing about Central Europe. What does it mean today? Focusing on different existing approaches towards Central Europe, we will define what actually Central Europe is. From this territorial point of view, we will try to understand the ever-changing geographical expression Central Europe. So Erhard, together with Ambassador Emil Brix, you recently published Mitteleuropa Revisited. In this book, you expose the need of new ways of thinking Central Europe today, other than either a great European success story or a fragmented and marginalized region. To begin with, could you tell us more about those diversions?
I think Emil Brix and I wrote two books about Central Europe. The first one appeared before the downfall of the Iron Curtain and had a great importance because we tried to line up that Central Europe will get more importance, or if it would happen, which happened after 3 years, after we published this book, if it would happen that the Iron Curtain is falling down, we would get back Central Europe. Because the Iron Curtain had the immediate consequence from the beginning that the connections which were traditionally very strong in Central Europe were finished. I think the changes of the map out of political reasons and by the two world wars which we had in the last century had immediate consequences for being together or being not together. Being lined up in different camps and so on and so on. And out of this, out of a cooperation with a lot of variety, because the characteristics of Central Europe is that in these states are living a lot of peoples with different languages, some different cultural developments and so on, but also a lot of historical connections and a common fate. Because the two world wars were happening in Central Europe. What was destroyed was really horrible. But I think the activity of the Central Europeans to regain possibilities for life was always very great. And especially, I think, concerning culture, it had a great importance. And a lot of things which are now important for Europe and even partly for the whole world were created in Central Europe. We are coming up out of this mixture. And that's very important for the current time. Central Europe was always a product of migration. I think traditionally, and we in Austria and in Vienna, we know it, I think a lot of peoples passed by. I don't want to go back for millenniums. But if you are looking to the changes by the downfall of the Roman Empire, I think a lot of migration was created in this time. And all they went through this area, the Huns and the Visigoths and a lot of Slavic peoples later, and this created a very creative mixture. It created also a lot of difficulties and tensions, without any doubt, but it created also productive competition out of this. And that was the reason why we wrote the two books. The first one, to line out if the Iron Curtain will fall down, which we were hoping in this time, with some success, I may say, I think it would be a great chance for Europe. Because our standing of Europe is always very much limited. I think hopefully it's changing, but for a longer time we were understanding Europe as European Union. And that is not true. I'm a fan of the European Union, but here it's quite necessary to know that Europe is a lot bigger. And here, Central Europe is a connection. Through Central Europe, you can connect the different parts which were here existing. So far, it was always a battle which was happening in Central Europe, either for better cooperation or for more conflicts. And that's for sure going on even in our years in the 21st century.
Thank you very much. So with these various meanings that Central Europe has, which one would you say should we follow today?
I think it has to be understood if the European Union shall be a success story, which was started as a success story, but now is in a lot of difficulties, it is necessary to strengthen Central Europe. What means strengthen? To strengthen in economic and social affairs, without any doubt, because I think the income differences in this area are still very big. It's improving, but we are not yet in the end. But this is not the most important. The most important is to create a more mutual understanding. I think what we have to analyze in the current situation, the better understanding of the others, of our neighbors, is not too much existing. A lot of prejudges is existing. We are against them. They are bringing a lot of dangers and so on and so on. And also, what was sometimes a strategy also in Austria, we have to build up fences. We have to close the Balkan route. The Balkan is for sure the weak part of Europe now, and weak part because it's neighboring to Central Europe, or is even a part of Central Europe, if you're looking to Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, and so on and so on. And so far, it's extremely important to do something that we are understanding the other. And that means not only understanding, it means also to create kinds of cooperation. Understanding means that we have to know the history of the others, because out of history, a lot of misunderstandings are existing. I spoke about prejudges existing. This is coming out of a different perception of history. I think we are convinced that, for example, I say it for Austria, that the Serbs are nasty people. For sure, the Serbs are also convinced that we might be nasty people, and so on and so on. It's only one example here for sure existing. And also the different understandings about history. Who is responsible for what? Let's say together, we Central Europeans are totally together responsible what of nonsense has happened here in this region. And we have also a responsibility in other parts of Europe, as the other parts also have a responsibility for us. I think that's not yet developed. Here's more to do. And I think it's now undercover by globalization, because everybody is saying, why shall I look to 100, 200 or 500 kilometers here from me? The globalization challenge is existing. No, I think we can handle globalization only if we are able to handle our Central European difficulties. And we have to be very careful. In the current situation, a lot of powers from outside are coming to Central Europe. To mention it, the Chinese are very much present. I think they are owners of the ports of Piraeus in Greece. I think they are trying to improve the railway system from Athens to Belgrade, Budapest, and so on and so on. It's also the interest of the Russians, I think, to build more connections here. It's not only the Silk Road, but it's the general development. And the Americans were very strong here also after the Second World War, even also with some interest. Do not forget, for example, the existence of Kosovo was a result of political influence of the Americans here. For the moment it's less, but for sure it is existent. So far, even Central Europe has a global importance as an example. Are we able to live together? Are we able to develop strategy to handle the problems? Or are we failing in this direction? And if Central Europe is failing, whole Europe is failing.
You have mentioned that we have countries that are part of the European Union in Central Europe, but we have other countries that are not yet part of the European Union. When we look back this year, 25 years of the accession of Austria to the European Union. Since 2004, a lot of the Central European states are member of the European Union. Can you tell us a bit more what changed in these times and how it relates to current challenges that we are facing on the continent?
The most tremendous change is by the entrance of Austria to the European Union happened in connection with the downfall of the Iron Curtain. I have to repeat it, especially in economy. I think the economic connections in this area are really big. And if we are living quite well as Austrians and having until now a good income, this is a result of the business investments in Central Europe, East Europe, and Southeast Europe. We earned a lot of money by this. I think we never did the real consequences out of this, that out of this earning of money, you have also a lot of obligations, and you have to do something for the neighbors. I think that's one of the big mistakes. Another one is a real European responsibility. I spoke about mutual understanding by understanding of history. I give you one example because I was involved in this. We developed a joint history book project because the political arguments against the others are always coming out of history. So far we have to know the history of the other and have to understand it. We created with a center which was based in Thessaloniki in Greece 6 thick books. What did we do there? Not writing a common history. We tried to confront the different understanding of history in the different countries. I think so that you can read, in this case, concerning the wars with the Ottoman Empire, for example, others have another understanding, we have this understanding, that we are learning out of this. Here I'm a little bit critical to the European Union. We had to finish this project because we were very good on the way to make seminars for the teachers in secondary schools and so on, that they are able to teach it in the right way. But from a certain moment on, the European Commission said we have no money anymore, and we did not find anybody else who is able to pay. I think in every moment we can continue this project, and I think it is for sure also necessary. There's one example in the history after 1945. This is a better understanding between France and Germany. Between the French and the Germans, I think it has for sure improved. And I think it is a basis until now for the common understanding in the European Union. But I think to build up a common Europe cannot only be based on the mutual understanding of France and Germany. I think it has to be a common understanding. We are going a little bit in the other direction by the Brexit. That the British are leaving, I think, is a setback for this common understanding, and I think it is a huge mistake for the Brits, but also for the Europeans.
So, when we talk about the necessity for cooperation in Central Europe, but also in the European Union as a whole, we inevitably will be touching the Visegrad 4 and the format of cooperation that is perceived sometimes on a European level as very challenging and not very productive, especially when we look at the new multi-financial framework and the next generation EU budget for the recovery plan after the corona pandemic. So within EU integration, is the Visegrad Group an obstacle, or is it actually something that can foster the importance of the region and also bring Central Europe a bit more into the center of the European Union so that it's not only German and French cooperation that is dominating further integration?
Here I have to give a clear answer. I think this cooperation of the Visegrad Group is good for Europe. I think we need more regional cooperations. I think not only here in Central Europe by the 4, but also in other directions. I think we need more cooperation in the Mediterranean area, for example. We have a very good cooperation of the Baltic states with the Scandinavians, which is, I think, extremely helpful. and so on and so on. I think that's for sure necessary because you cannot have only one big cooperation like for whole Europe. You need also pieces. You need also some areas where more connections existing and where local and regional problems are solved. So far, it's extremely good. I'm a little bit critical who is connected with the Visegrad Group. It is until now Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland. I think it should be more. There's a proposal that Slovenia and Austria shall be also a part. Maybe it's also not enough. I think concerning this regional cooperation, I would go in the direction to say we need regional cooperations on different fields. In economy, especially in traffic and transport, here, and so on and so on. I think we have to look for fields. We need, for example, cooperations also on energy. I think to overcome under ecological aspects the current energy situation and the difficulties which we have by coal and also, I have to say, directly by atomic energy, I think is challenging for a better regional cooperation. I think, to give you one primitive example, I think for the moment electricity is going from our Central European area northwards. Along the Baltic Sea and the North Sea, a lot of wind energy and energy coming from the sea was created. The electricity from there have to go in the other direction. But for the moment, it's not really possible. I think here is a classical example where we need a strictly based regional cooperation under European auspices, or even, I may say, under global auspices. And so far, it's necessary not to have big conferences where we are saying we like each other and then nothing is happening. I think we need the definition of the fields where we need regional cooperation and what can be solved in this way. For Central Europe, I'll give you one example, that's the River Danube. The River Danube is only the second longest river in Europe. The longest one is the Volga, but there's a big difference between the two. Volga is going to an area where only Russians are living. Danube is going through an area where 14 states are connected. 14, 1-4. I think this is extremely challenging. Because here you need a better mutual understanding that you can settle the problems. And it can be an excellent transport way, because ecologically, I think water transport is the best solution. But we need common solutions. So far, because we have parts of the River Danube where the level of the water is extremely low, so shipping is not really possible. I think we have huge differences in the western part, by Germany and by Austria. I think the transport possibilities are better developed. I think if you are going on from Hungary, even then to Romania and so on, and arriving in the Black Sea, it's not yet developed. That can be only settled in common cooperation. I think there is no Austrian Danube, Hungarian Danube, Romanian Danube, Croatian Danube, Serbian Danube. I think the Danube is a common river which has to be settled in a close cooperation and is creating a lot of chances. So far, the cooperation along the River Danube is an example. Might it be happen or will it not happen? We have an activity based by the European Union, Danube Regional Cooperation, but I think it's going too slow and too slow and too slow. And it is not always a question of money. I think the money is existing. It is a question of the will, of fantasy. Sometimes we have to invent a lot that we are able to settle the things as problems which are existing. But may I say, even by the ecological dimension of our time, the River Danube is an outstanding example where we can improve. So far, the Danube is the key challenge for Central Europe in the current situation.
Erhard, thank you very much. I think we have the perfect basis for the next episodes to come in our new series, CEE, Central Europe Explained. And you have mentioned a lot of topics that we will be picking up in our following episodes. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and we are looking forward to the third book that you can write on Central Europe, and hopefully the challenges that you have described will then be overcome as they have been after the first one.
But if we are arriving at the third book, we need a lot of success stories. So far, by this activity, I think it is a challenge for the Central Europeans to do more as they did until now.
Thank you very much. This was the first episode, What is Central Europe Today? And we are looking forward to the next episodes of Central Europe Explained, CEE, powered by Erste Group.
IDM Podcast.
Institut für den Donauraum und Mitteleuropa.
Institute for the Danube Region and Central Europe.
European Perspectives.
Regional Actions.
Cooperation and expertise since 1953.